Happy Friday, Patreon supporters. I am just coming to you for a brief moment to share with you a couple of things that I've been working on and see if maybe you can't help me find some answers to some questions that I have as well. First, I've been working on something called an erotic education, and I'm not claiming the term as my own. I don't know if it's been used before or not. But one of the things that led me to the understanding that perhaps maybe we as a society need something like this is um, along the lines of a lot of the work that Esther Perel has done. She's an author of Mating in Captivity. She's a world-renowned viral video vixen who has all the answers, it seems, on relationships and specifically monogamous relationships and sex advice. She talks about erotic intelligence. And so I kind of took off of that, this erotic intelligence idea, in that maybe we need an erotic education. A lot of us go through, I think the trending buzzword is a religious deconstruction, taken from the term that Derrida had presented to us all in regard to how we look at language and we break down language. And while we do a religious deconstruction, a lot of the times we don't do an erotic deconstruction. And what I mean by that is we don't break down all of the taboos and the limitations and the parameters and the boundaries and regulations, if you will, that kind of coincide with the erotic, with our sexuality, with sex practices. And not a lot of people who speak to theological or religious deconstruction incorporate sexuality or the erotic. And so, because I see that that's lacking, I decided to make that my mission. So, to educate you with the erotic. And obviously, I'm using other people's works, but I think that's what we all do anyway. And so, I just want to take what I've read, reinterpret it, reiterate a lot of very important concepts and ideas that I have come across, and just kind of present it to you in a different way to see if it can be worked in with a religious deconstruction. And I'm going to be using the word transformation more than anything. I don't like the word deconstruction. Maybe because it's so trendy. Maybe because people who use the word don't understand what the word means. I myself did that at a point. I tossed around the word deconstruction, and when someone dropped Derrida down on me, I was like, well, what the hell does that have to do with anything? So that showed my ignorance. And so I think it's important that we use words that we better understand, and I understand transformation. I understand metamorphosis. So erotic transformation, if you will, not an erotic deconstruction. Ultimately, I think there are better ways that we can approach constructing our ideas and beliefs around what we understand about sexuality, about sex practices, and how sexuality is intertwined with spirituality. And so that's just kind of what I'm working on. I published a couple of items that I had been working on for Erotic Education, Part 1 and Part 2. I've since been editing a lot of that, and I think that's something that's ultimately going to go in my manuscript for Unfleshed, Making Monogamous Relationships Real. Some of the questions that I'm stuck on right now have been actually presented to me by other people, and it's more so just kind of a broad generalization of questions in regard to the questions that I'm asked. And ultimately what I've come down to is and I could be wrong, so if you have any wisdom or recommendations, please don't hesitate to point them out to me. But it seems like there isn't like a book out there for what to do when you go from some form of a religious reconstructionism to incorporate a sexual reconstructionism. And so how do we do that? And what I'm noticing the most that seems to be maybe problematic with married people or people who are in committed long-term monogamous relationships or even polyamorous relationships, I'm not trying to exclude anyone, but when we go through these kinds of processes, a lot of times it's not a dual thing. It's not something that our partner is doing with us. And in many cases, it's something that our partner actually pushes back against. And so what I want to try and do is find a way to curate some kind of a I don't know, an education of a sort, a curriculum. Maybe we need an erotic curriculum in how we reconstruct our sexual ideals and what we understand about the erotic within a relationship so it's not making or breaking our relationship. I was very fortunate. My husband and I, we often remark on this. We kind of look back and think about what we've been through and all of the I guess, constructing that we've done. And we kind of sit on this position that we've never really been fully constructed. So we didn't have anything to really deconstruct from. It's just more so we kind of sat in a box for a little bit and hopped out and joined a new box. And in some events, the boxes that I sat in, I used as weapons to exclude other people and to other people. And so he patiently watched and tolerated and accepted me for who I was while I was going through these problematic phases in which I think I was just trying to project my anger towards collective ideals and people that represent or follow these collective ideals as a way to, I don't know, make myself feel better. And I think that happens a lot. But nonetheless, we have been, excuse me, we have been fortunate that we've always grown together and we've always faced challenges together and we've always faced changes together, and it's always been a partnership. But that's not a common occurrence with a lot of couples. A lot of couples face even more difficulty when they're going through their deconstruction or transformation, and it creates such a divide in a marriage that there's a disconnect. And I believe connection is very important. And so that's one of the things that I kind of like trying and working towards is how do we curate some kind of a curriculum in which we're learning how to not only connect but effectively and compassionately communicate with our partners about what we're going through. And so a lot of times I am asked a lot of questions. I get a lot of people that just, I think more so just kind of want to be listened to. As I've said before, I've talked about this on my podcast too, and I like it, and I feel so honored that people are willing to trust me with some of the stuff that they're going through and some of the problems that they're facing, especially within their marriage. I know how hard that can be to talk to someone that is kind of basically a complete stranger and just kind of lay out all of your story to them and then say, now, what do I do? And I don't want to be the problem solver. I want to be someone who just helps you figure out how to find your own solutions. I'm not trying to be a fixer, and I'm not trying to be a therapist, and I'm not trying to be a life coach. I'm just trying to help other people find ways that they can actually find solutions to whatever problems or difficulties they're facing. And I do that by referring to, all the books. People will ask me a question or they'll present their story and I'll say, oh, there's a book for that. And I'll remember reading something similar to that and I can pull that out. And recently I had a question that I couldn't go to a book to and say, oh, I've read about this kind of experience before. I know that whomever I have read has offered some kind of a simplified solution in that area that you could try and apply. But in the matters of being married and then being this transformational being, we don't know how to put the two together without it breaking things apart. And breaking things apart is really important. Like I say, smash things all the time. It's just sometimes we don't have the right adhesive to put it back together. And when we do try and put it back together, we're putting in pieces that maybe we shouldn't. And sometimes we're missing pieces. And so there's not a book for that. And so I don't know. I mean, I kind of believe that's what Enfleshed is essentially going to be when I'm finished with the book. Is it's like it keeps taking me so long to come to terms with being rested on this chapter and this chapter and this chapter, because then I read something else or somebody writes to me or somebody calls me or somebody wants to talk to me about, their story and their situation, and I think, oh, there's a piece of this kind of situation that I haven't accounted for in this book. And so it seems like I keep putting it on the back burner, like I need to learn more. And that's that Enneagram 5 in me again. But ultimately, I think that's what Enfleshed is going to be about. Not only about, learning how to make our relationship seriously real, not only learning how to give it a realistic, fleshy form, but how do we go through the struggles and the difficulties of transformation throughout life. It's hard enough to do on your own, and then to have another person, your two have become one, to have that other person, that differentiated individual person that you share this relationship with, try to have them go down that same path with you is really difficult. And so I think maybe the mission or the purpose of my book is transitioning or transforming a little bit, which is fine. I love that. I love that it's unfolding before my eyes. Like, I went into it with a completely different idea when I was originally writing with a different writer as a co-writing collaboration, and then I had to start all the way over from scratch, and I wanted to throw so much of that old stuff out that I was working on. But the more I think about it, the person that I was at one point collaborating with might have been facing some similar issues as what other people are writing to me about. And I'm not sitting here saying I don't have problems either. Trust me. There are a lot of times where I go through different phases, and I start pulling other things down and maybe throwing some layers of some masks on myself, where my husband's over here like, I love you. I hope you're going to get over this phase soon. And I hope we can tame it down a little bit so that you don't make me crazy. So, this is much longer than I had intended, so I'm going to wrap this up. So, ultimately, what my question is for you is, do you know of any books out there where such a situation has been tried to be tackled, in which there's the deconstruction within a marriage and how to make it work? And if not, is that what kind of book you're after? And if you have any suggestions or advice, slap them down in the comments. I love hearing from you. I just want to thank you again for being a Patreon supporter. And until next time, enjoy your Friday. Bye, guys.